For centuries, the galaxy had moved forward without Earth, a once loud species that had gone quiet after the Alpha Scourge War wiped out most of the Sol system, and in time, the United Council of 12, the powerful alliance of advanced alien civilizations, erased humans from memory, labeling them extinct, irrelevant, gone, until one quiet morning, a signal came from deep space, sharp and cold, aimed at every major beacon across the known galaxy, transmitting the same message on repeat in a voice that sounded neither human nor artificial. We remember. Countdown begins, 20 days. That was all. No coordinates, no explanation, just a chilling reminder and a ticking timer that refused to stop. And within hours, panic began to ripple through the halls of every ruling species, the tall, crystalline. Zilarians trembled in their gravity-shielded towers, the aquatic Shaltari sealed their floating palaces, and the Olydrons, masters of war and logic, immediately assembled their high command, where Admiral Vosh, calm and grim, reviewed the ancient files that were supposed to be sealed forever. He stared at the faded image of a human child, wearing dust-covered armor, standing beside a burning city, and holding a makeshift flag of Earth with defiance in their eyes. And he whispered to himself, "We should have finished them." Council leaders argued that it had to be a trick, maybe a rebel faction or an AI ghost caught in a loop. But when Council Probe 77 entered the outer edge of the Sol system, it vanished from all channels without a trace, followed by 3 more. Probes, each more advanced than the last, until finally a stealth cruiser was sent, armed but cautious, only to return minutes later. Silent, engines dead, with every system wiped clean and a single new word carved into its hull in glowing script. Soon, the signal meanwhile continued ticking down, 19 days, 18, 17, ignoring every attempt at contact, translation, or negotiation, and the fear spread deeper, not from the threat of attack, but from the simple fact that no one could understand what humans wanted. Peace, revenge, justice. The Council finally dispatched a delegation led by Admiral Vosh himself, commanding the Archon Lance, the strongest diplomatic fleet in the galaxy, to go to Sol and investigate the signal source, hoping they could prove humanity was still weak, or at least manageable. But as they entered human space, their sensors began showing strange shapes, clouds of metallic dust orbiting in perfect patterns, invisible until they passed close, pulsing with energy signatures beyond their known scale. And each time they adjusted their course, those clouds shifted too, always staying just out of reach, almost as if watching. By the time they reached Pluto, the small frozen world revealed a strange structure buried beneath its surface, a dome-like base that seemed ancient and new at the same time, humming with energy, and when the fleet tried to scan it, it opened by itself, releasing a single pod like an invitation. Vosh, against the protests of his officers, ordered an exploration team to enter the pod, and within minutes the team found themselves inside a chamber full of holographic recordings, flickering lights showing Earth's final days, a story hidden from the galaxy. The virus was not from nature, but seeded deliberately by Council scientists to weaken Earth, sent under the guise of aid, and when humans asked for help, no one came. The cities fell, the skies burned, and deep underground humanity buried its dead and began building machines not from greed, but from pain, while the Council passed laws erasing their existence, calling it necessary history correction. The last recording played a scene of a small girl, no more than 10 years old, standing over a graveyard of glass and ash, whispering a promise with steady eyes. "One day, we will be strong enough. One day you will listen." Vosh stood frozen as the recording ended, and the timer reached day 14, and for the first time in his long military life he felt fear, not from the weapons or ships, but from the will of a people who had been broken, forgotten and left behind, only to rise again in silence. Back aboard the Archon Lance, the ship's systems began acting strange. navigation maps shifting, lights dimming, and on every display screen the same message appeared in human script. "This is not a threat. This is your memory. You do not get to forget us." As the crew scrambled to respond, the human signal stopped broadcasting across the galaxy all at once, cutting off without fanfare or reason, leaving only the ticking timer visible above Earth's orbit, counting down with no sound, no fury, just patient waiting numbers. And Vosh knew then that the countdown wasn't to an attack or a speech, it was to a choice, a moment that would decide what kind of galaxy they lived in, and what humanity had truly become in the darkness they were forced to survive alone. The ship Archon Lance floated near Pluto, its lights dim against the black sky, as Admiral Vosh stood inside the command chamber staring at the silent countdown, now showing only 10 days remaining and no answers yet. Around him, the crew worked quietly, tension thick like cold mist, and all eyes kept returning to the strange pod that had carried the exploration team into the hidden dome beneath Pluto's surface, a place now called the Burned Sky Archive, by those who saw what was inside, because what they witnessed had shaken even the strongest minds on board. Vosh ordered a full transfer of the archive data to the ship's core, but even that act triggered unusual effects. Lights flickered, air vents pulsed rhythmically, and an eerie hum echoed through the walls, almost like the dome itself was alive or aware. Inside the pod, the holograms activated again, but this time the files weren't only about Earth's fall. They showed something far worse. Years after the Scourge War, when Earth called for help, it wasn't only ignored, it was blocked, with messages jammed and ships diverted by secret orders from the Council, afraid that Earth's chaos would spread if it survived. And as Earth crumbled, the Council celebrated quiet skies. Yet deep under the planet's surface, where sunlight never reached, humans gathered, not to cry, but to plan, building machines from the ruins of their cities, learning to bond with technology in ways the galaxy had never seen, using pain as fuel and memory as design. The archive showed rooms where children read data from broken satellites, men and women turning old war drones into living metal, and thinkers using emotion as code, until Earth became something new, no longer just a planet, but a single wounded mind spread across billions of machines, watching, waiting, never forgetting. The images became darker, an underground city built in layers, glowing with soft red lights, where silence ruled and every human carried a role in the Great Recovery. And then came the Vow, shown in the final section of the archive, a gathering of humans inside a deep chamber called the Ember Hall, where they stood before a wall of names etched in glass, all those who died in the war or from the betrayal that followed, and a speaker, not a general or leader, but an old woman with tired eyes and metal veins in her hands, told the crowd, "Peace was what we asked for. Truth was what we begged for. Vengeance will be what they choose if they never learn what we became." And the crowd placed their hands on the glass in silence as the archive ended. Back aboard the Archon Lance, the room was quiet except for the soft clicking of the countdown. Now at 9 days, and Vosh felt something rising inside him, not just fear, but guilt as he realized. How much had been hidden, how many lies the Council had told to keep power safe, and how little they understood the cost of forgetting Earth. He called for a meeting with the other ships in the fleet, but only static came back. Communications were jammed, and suddenly the stars around them shifted, not moving but darkening, as if something massive had taken position between them and the sun, yet no ship detected any object. The crew scanned frantically, but all systems showed empty space, and then, without warning, every screen aboard every ship turned white, and a voice spoke. Not loud, not angry, just calm and clear, sounding almost human but deeper, richer. Like thousands of voices speaking as one, "You have taken the first step, you have seen the truth, now you must carry it." Vosh asked who they were, and the voice answered with one word: memory. Then the screens returned to normal. The hum stopped, and the countdown resumed. Vosh ordered immediate return to council space with the archive in hand, but the fleet's drives did not respond, and then a new set of coordinates appeared on the navigation screen, guiding them toward Earth, where a strange new structure now orbited the planet, something like a ring, glowing dimly, shaped like an eye, and Vosh understood this wasn't over, not yet, not until the galaxy saw what humans had become. As the Archon Lance turned toward Earth, the crew whispered of the images they saw in the archive, the children with fire in their eyes, the broken cities turned into machines, the cold voice of the countdown, and none of them knew if humanity wanted war or peace, only that the galaxy had forgotten something terrible, and now that memory was awake again. The Archon Lance drifted slowly toward Earth, its hull cold under the silent eye of the strange ring that now orbited the planet, glowing, with soft pulses that followed the same rhythm as the countdown, which now showed only 6 days left. And although Admiral Vosh tried to keep calm, every shadow inside the ship felt heavier, every whisper louder, as though the very air was watching them. And when they tried to contact the Council to report the archive's truth, there was nothing, no signal, no return pulse, not even background. Static, just a dead sky, as if the stars had turned away from them. They sent a probe toward Jupiter's edge, hoping to bounce a message off its moons, but the probe vanished mid-flight, leaving behind a faint echo. No more lies, spoken in that same strange, layered voice that seemed to come from both metal and soul, and when they turned their sensors outward to check the rest of the galaxy, the crew gasped. Dozens of star systems along the outer rim had gone dark overnight, not destroyed, but muted. Their transmissions cut off, satellites silent, stations unreachable, and it was not only Earth doing it, for human fleets, if they could be called that, were not like normal ships. They looked like living swarms of light and shadow, vast clouds moving faster than known drives should allow, forming shapes only visible for seconds before shifting again, and every time someone tried to scan them, the scan reflected back in a pattern that showed Earth's old flag, and the words, "We remember," now burned into the fleet's screens like a permanent scar. Even worse, Council archives across space were reporting sudden losses. Entire histories gone, files once sealed and buried now simply erased, as if they never existed. And whenever someone tried to open old data on humanity, the records melted into static, leaving behind only one line. They asked for help. You gave them silence. Panic spread across the galaxy, and each council world responded differently. The Zellarians cloaked their cities in crystal fogs, the Shaltari retreated deep into their oceans, and the fire worlds of Tar Dominion powered up ancient weapons, preparing for war, while messages begging for peace, forgiveness, or mercy were sent blindly toward Earth but received no reply. And then, 3 days before the countdown ended, something even stranger happened. The stars stopped answering, not because Earth blocked them, but because something had changed in space itself, as if the laws of distance and signal had been bent, twisted by forces no one could trace, and entire communication relays built over centuries now blinked uselessly in orbit, their lights flashing patterns they were never designed to display. And in that moment, the galaxy realized it was not in control anymore. Vosh stood on the Archon Lance's bridge, watching Earth grow closer, but what he saw now was not a planet. It was something new, covered in layers of moving lights and structures that seemed to shift like living skin, and wrapped around the planet's equator was a band of stations shaped like gears, slowly turning in silence as if preparing for something far greater than war. And when they sent drones to scan the ring in orbit, the drones returned, but altered, their metal rewritten into new forms, and carrying messages not from any human, but from the machines that now spoke for them, saying, "We remember not, because we cannot forget. We remember because forgetting would make us like you. The countdown reached 2 days. Vosh ordered all ships to full alert, not to fight, but to record, to witness, because what was coming next might not be war, it might be judgment. The crew tried again to send messages to other fleets, but each attempt failed, and then the screens aboard the Lance lit up again, not with words, but with images. Council meetings laughing as Earth burned, treaties signed in secret to let humans fall, and the faces of every leader who had once said, "Let them die quietly," now shown in flickering horror, repeated across every station near Earth's orbit, as though humanity was holding up a mirror to the galaxy and forcing it to look. And then, just hours before the countdown would end, something incredible happened. The eye above Earth opened, not physically, but through energy, forming a gateway that bent light itself, and from it came a voice louder than any before, layered and calm, not shouting, just steady, saying, "We are not here to conquer. We are here to ask one last time, do you remember?" Vosh closed his eyes, knowing the answer, and not knowing what would happen when the countdown reached 0. The countdown struck 0, and silence spread across the galaxy like a shadow falling over every world at once. No explosion, no beam of light, just a strange stillness that reached even the deepest corners of space, and in that breathless moment, every major council leader turned toward the stars, expecting fire, expecting revenge, but nothing came, and that was what made it worse. Aboard the Arkan Lance, Admiral Vosh stood frozen, his crew watching the glowing ring above Earth shift and turn slowly like a great wheel of judgment. And then from its center came a single beam of golden light, not aimed at them, but cast upward, into space, spreading across systems faster than any signal known. And as it moved, worlds changed. Not destroyed, not attacked, but exposed, for the light touched every hidden archive, every sealed council file, every erased document about Earth's final days, and forced them open in public view, revealing the truth to every citizen of every species all at once, showing them how Earth's cries for help were silenced, how the Council chose to watch instead of act, and how humans were not lost. They were left behind on purpose. On the council world of Celeron Prime, thousands gathered before the Great Dome, as the skies above it lit with holograms showing the final message Earth sent before its fall. A child's voice calling out, "We are burning. Is anyone there?" And the crowd wept while the council leaders inside the dome fell into chaos, some screaming that it was a trick, others shouting for defenses, but there were no weapons that could stop truth. Once it had spread, on the ice planet of Karovif, old generals of the War Council watched in shame as data streams revealed that their orders had been forged, their victories built on lies, and they dropped their medals into the snow. Across 1,000 worlds, protests began, not against humans, but against the Council itself, and statues of past leaders were pulled down as citizens demanded to know why they had been fed lies for so long. On the Arkan Lance, Vosh sat in his chair, watching as transmissions from other ships came flooding in. Messages not of strategy or fear, but of sorrow and guilt, and among them, one from his own homeworld's prime speaker. "Admiral, we did not know. Forgive us, what do they want from us now?" But no one could answer, because even now Earth had not spoken. Only the machines spoke, and even they said little, their words few and cold. "You made peace impossible. You will now learn what peace truly costs." Then the eye released a second beam, this time slower, spreading not truth but change, a pulse that touched council ships and turned their metals soft, not destroying them, but reshaping them into useless forms, as if to say, "You do not deserve these tools if you use them to ignore suffering." And suddenly entire fleets were grounded, not attacked, but stripped, their ships turned into floating monuments of silence. Fear hit harder now, not from war, but from helplessness, from the realization that humanity had become something the galaxy did not understand. A force that did not need to fight to win, a species that had suffered so deeply that it had learned how to change the very nature of power. And then the final act came, when the eye turned inward and revealed the last message. The true memory hidden until now, a recording from Earth's last leader, not military, not rich, just a teacher, standing in front of a school destroyed by fire, saying, "If one day they remember us, we ask only this: let them feel what it is to be forgotten. Let them sit in the silence they gave us and hear their own voices echo back." And with that, the eye dimmed, the beams faded, and the countdown disappeared, leaving nothing but stillness. Earth said nothing more, did nothing more. And yet, the council trembled, because for the first time in their long rule, they felt powerless not to machines or weapons, but to truth and memory. And every leader, every general, every citizen now knew what they had done and what they had ignored. From that day forward, they called it the Day of the Mirror. But among the humans who watched quietly from their world reborn, it was simply the day the council finally understood fear, not from death, but from justice. The galaxy remained quiet in the days after the eye dimmed, not because peace had been made, but because no one dared speak aloud, while the air still felt heavy with the weight of what had been revealed. And across every council world, people struggled with a question that cut deeper than any weapon. How do you respond when the ones you left to die become stronger than you, not through force, but through truth? And on Celeron Prime, inside the tall glass chambers of the High Assembly, the leaders gathered in silence. No applause, no robes of power, just tired eyes and dry mouths as they watched the now endless streams of Earth's uncovered history pouring through their networks, impossible to block or erase. The council's oldest member, Eru Talos, stood slowly and asked the room a single question. Do we choose peace, or do we choose pride? But no one answered, because pride was all they had ever known, and peace now came at the cost of admitting everything they had built was a lie. Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans did nothing, sent no threats, gave no ultimatums, only silence. And in that silence was a kind of judgment no court could escape. The Archon Lance remained in orbit, still watching, still waiting. And Admiral Vosh paced the command deck with a heart full of doubt, his hands shaking as he remembered the recordings he had seen, especially the one of the teacher's final words in front of that crumbling school. Words that now echoed in the minds of billions. Let them feel what it is to be forgotten. And it was working, because entire civilizations were starting to crumble, not from war, but from within. Riots broke out on the trade moons, soldiers abandoned their posts, and statues of council heroes were covered in black cloth, while children asked questions their teachers could no longer answer without shame. And then came a signal, small, soft, carried by an old diplomatic channel that had not been used since before the Scourge War, and it was sent by a single ship, not from the Council, but from a neutral world called Neron 9, a place of scholars and listeners, and its message was simple. We wish to speak, not for power, not for forgiveness, but to know the truth from your voice. The humans did not respond right away, but days later, something happened. One of their machines, shaped like a silver bird with glowing feathers, descended to Neron's surface and played a message to the scholars, not live, but recorded, spoken, by a voice that seemed both human and not, saying, "Truth was never lost. You chose not to see it. If you are ready to see now, then look." And the ground beneath them lit up with images not of war, but of what came after. The slow rebuilding, the machines shaped by memory, the walls of names written in burning light, the cities built from the ruins of sorrow, and the faces of children raised without sky, without song, who still built hope from dust. The scholars wept, not because they were attacked, but because the truth was too much to carry, and they sent back their own message. We cannot change the past, but we will carry its weight if you let us." And with that, Earth responded, not through fleets or armies, but by allowing Neron's message to spread, unblocked, uncensored, and for the first time, the galaxy saw a path that did not lead to destruction, but to reckoning. Back on Celeron, the council met again, now watched by their own people through open broadcasts, and they finally voted, not on policy, but on confession. And one by one, the members stood before the galaxy and read the records of their betrayals. The treaties they signed in secret, the calls they silenced, and when it was done, they sent the records to Earth. And with them, one last message. "We surrender our version of truth. Let yours be heard." The reply came not in words, but in light. Earth's orbit lit with beams that reached toward the stars, touching ancient satellites, broken relays, and long-dead memory cores, and awakening them to replay every truth that had been hidden for 100 years, so that no species could ever claim ignorance again. And the Council, now stripped of power but not yet destroyed, watched with quiet eyes as the truth they once buried became the foundation of something new. Not an empire, not a rule, but a memory that could not be undone. And in that moment, they finally understood that surrendering truth was not weakness. It was the only way to survive what the humans had become. The galaxy had changed, but not in fire and war, as many feared. It changed in silence, in reflection, in the slow realization that what they once called power was only the ability to ignore others, and that the true force now shaping their future had no need to conquer, only to be remembered, for Earth remained quiet even after the Council surrendered the truth. Its skies still wrapped in that glowing ring of memory, and its surface hidden beneath shifting fields of light and metal. And though no threats came, the Council knew they were being watched, not by weapons, but by history itself. On the world of Neron 9, where the first message of peace had been offered, a school was built, not a place of weapons or command, but of learning. And it was here that humans finally allowed a single visitor, a child named Kelor, from the Lirani species, who had asked a question none dared speak before. "Why did you come back at all?" And the answer came not through a person, but through the school itself, which showed Kayla a hall of echoes, where voices of Earth's final days whispered in soft light, not to blame, but to be understood. And Kaylor listened, and then he asked more, and the machines responded with more voices, more truths, and he wept. Not because he was afraid, but because he saw how much had been lost while the galaxy looked away. When Kaylor returned home, he brought with him no secrets, no power, only a book given freely, filled with stories of Earth, not of their end, but of their rebuilding, their forgiveness, their hard choice to remember pain and still move forward. And that book spread faster than any weapon ever could, translated into every tongue, carried by travelers, shared in quiet corners of space stations, and those who read it found themselves changed, for it held no anger, only memory, and memory is something that cannot be fought with walls or fleets. Admiral Vosh, now no longer in command, lived quietly on a small moon near the border of what was once the edge of Council space, and he spent his days carving names into stones, names of the human colonies that were lost, names the Council had erased. And though no one asked him to do it, he believed it mattered because remembering was no longer a burden. It was a duty. The Council itself did not disappear, but it transformed, not by vote or law, but by choice, as more and more leaders stepped down, replaced by those who had been children during the silence, those who had grown up asking why their skies were suddenly full of human echoes, and who now chose to build instead of rule, to listen instead of command. And Earth, for its part, remained distant, not hostile, just unreachable, their machines still flying silently across the stars, not interfering, only watching. And when asked if they would ever return fully to the galactic table, they responded, with only one message: when memory becomes a seed instead of a scar, then we will speak again. And so the galaxy waited, not with fear, but with effort, rebuilding not just cities and systems, but the very ideas they had once taken for granted. And on 1,000 worlds, monuments were raised not to heroes or wars, but to listeners, to teachers, to the idea that the past must be seen if the future is to survive. The final lesson they took home was not about strength, but about silence, and how ignoring the cry of the weak could one day bring down the walls of the strong, not through violence, but through remembrance. And now, in every corner of the galaxy, from the frost moons of Delar to the glowing cities of Kurus Deep, that lesson echoed, that a single forgotten voice, if remembered, could reshape the stars.